All right, guys. So trouble, absolute trouble in the Saudi desert. Stage 2, 48-hour chrono stage. So we talked about it in the stage preview that there were going to be multiple campsites, multiple rest zones that these guys were going to have to stop at depending on their stage time. So the one with the longest closing time was the first one at 1900. So roughly 12 hours minus that, it's about 7 p.m., if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but doing this on the fly because, I mean, this is crazy. So the 48-hour chrono stage, again, you got 48 hours. You've got 6 camp zones, 6 rest zones that you can stay in. When you arrive at that rest zone, you make the decision, depending on how close you are to the closing time of it, whether you're going to push on to the next one or not. Well, the first one in is 491 kilometers from the start. So at kilometer 491 is rest zone A. Well, what seems to be the problem? Well, the problem is the whole first front of that stage was a lot of dunes. So what ended up happening is you had almost 30 or more competitors spending the night out in the desert. So not making it to that first camp zone or that first rest zone A at kilometer 491, many of them at the fueling at kilometer 412, some of them even before that. So very, very, very long day. So now remember, according to this, and this is where I think this is going to be interesting, what the organization is going to do with this, if they're even going to do anything with it. And that is that, well, your race time doesn't stop until you get to the rest zone. So for the people that spent the night, if you stopped and you slept for 8 hours till sunrise, you are now basically giving away 8 hours. This was something that came up when it's like, well, how does the rest zone thing work? Why don't you just stay there and then kill your race time there or stop your race time there? It doesn't work that way. So if you arrive 30 minutes early to the rest zone, you have to make that decision. Well, do I give away 30 minutes or do I push on to the next one? So the next one could be 40, 50, 60 kilometers away. Now, do you want to give up that time? Do you want to sit there? If you're in a vehicle, jump out of the car, take a quick look around. Hey, can we use this half hour to fix something? Or is the car solid and we're ready to go to the next part? So there's some stuff there. The bike's the same thing. Man, I've been struggling with this. Do I give away those 30 minutes or do I go through it? And that's if you get there 30 minutes. If you get there 5 minutes before, maybe that's not a big deal. If you get there an hour before, you're kind of like, I probably should go. So there's definitely some decisions to be made. But the clock, as mentioned, doesn't stop until you get to that rest zone. So now everybody that spent the night out in the desert, their race clock didn't stop. So now you've got 8-10 hour stage times and they're not even to the finish line yet, or they're not even to the first rest zone. So it's going to be an interesting thing to see how the organization handles this moving forward. I'm going to be keeping an eye and see. I have a suspicion that they're probably going to take it easier on these guys in stage 3. Maybe there'll be a modification to it. Remember, stage 3, they're going to be racing out. We'll do the stage preview here in just a little bit. But remember, stage 3, they're going to race out to the next bivouac. And then that bivouac for stage 4 is the beginning of the marathon. So the marathon stage, different to the 48-hour chrono, is that all of the competitors will race to a certain bivouac. There will be no teams there. There will be no other than organization. They'll be issued, their rations, their food, whatever it is. They have their own little bivouac there, and then they're going to race to their team the next day. So no support, so no physio, no mechanics, no nothing, and no extra spare parts. This is where tire conservation comes in. This is where working with your teammates, hey, you got a higher position. Your tire looks pretty roached. Why don't we swap? It's things like that. So, without jeopardizing one race or the other, there's a lot more teamwork that goes into a marathon stage, but that's because everybody ends up in the same spot when compared to the 48-hour chrono stage where you don't know where people are going to end up. As you guys heard in the results show, the Honda team had a very, very strong showing. Everybody was up top. Everybody was pretty much together. They always had a teammate within reach, which is good. As they say, in the desert, 2 is 1 if something happens and 1 is none. So I don't know. Or there's probably a bunch of movies that have said that as well. But very, very, very interesting to see. I'm very curious to see what the organization does with this again. I mean, that looks like trouble. I think that the organization has something to maybe perfect on this. This wasn't the issue that they had last year. Last year, it was only a couple of people that kind of jumped from one bivouac to or from one rest zone to the next, and it wasn't that bad. It was only a couple. but now, or a handful, I should say, but now it's a group that didn't make it out to that first camp zone. So maybe they were a little overzealous, thinking, man, we should be able to get to this camp zone and make it happen. But then again, that's only 491 kilometers. And in the stage breakdown, we talked about this. I can show you the graphic here as far as how the stage breaks down. There's a lot of sand, and that sand is at the beginning of this, the dunes, I should say. The second half of this, the last 300 kilometers or so, were more of a sand track, dirt track type deal, a little bit of rock. And then there was, for the bikes, there was a short stint of dunes. The cars have an even smaller stint of dunes, which isn't that bad. We know gas mileage comes into play, especially in the sand dunes. If you're not an efficient rider, or if you're having a tough time, if the dunes are all torn up from competitors before you, there's a lot of stuff that can happen and go on. So we'll look to see. We'll find out a little bit more about it. I'm hoping the organization comes up with something to do it. But as it was said, and I saw that this in the American Rally group, somebody mentioned it, is that, well, really at the end of the day, the medals, the finisher medals are all the same. The finisher medal is the finisher medal. So if you finished with 10 hours of penalties, or if you finished with 1 hour of penalties, or however it was, you finished the Dakar. And remember, for the most of these people that are competing in the Dakar, it's not about winning the class, it's about finishing the Dakar. So we're wishing them the best of luck. Hey, this is just a little bit of a setback, but make sure the bike is whole, make sure you're good to go. And let's see what happens. Stage 3 going to be coming up soon, a few hours from now. Right now, we are at 8:28 on the West Coast in the morning. Means 7:30 at night over on the Saudi side of things. So we'll stay tuned for more. We'll try and get some messages from these guys and see how they're feeling, see how they're doing. It's been a long day. I wouldn't count on getting anything back from them, and I totally understand that because, well, they just got their butts kicked. So with that being said, guys, don't forget, like, share, subscribe, do all of that fun stuff. Drop your comments below. What do you think? What do you think the organization should do in this case? Got a bunch of people caught out. So comments down below. If you're on Spotify, don't forget, you can comment directly on the video. Or if you're on any of the other platforms, you can always send us a message at Chasing Waypoints on Instagram. So look forward to reading your guys' comments and questions. We'll talk soon. See ya.